Oh boy, this is gonna be a long one, and I can already feel my voice getting tired just thinking about it. Hello again, I'm back to take up some more of your time and talk about things that really don't matter in the long run, but that bother me personally in the moment, so here we go. Some of you may or may not be familiar with a series called My Pride. It's a YouTube animated series that has enjoyed quite a bit of popularity throughout the run of its first season, which just recently concluded. It's also drawn quite a bit of flack for the way that it portrays LGBT characters while parading itself around as an LGBT-friendly show. I started to make a video talking about the inconsistency of its writing with a focus on its protagonist, named Nothing, but I quickly realized that I wasn't saying anything new. There is a 2-hour and 40-minute video that covers everything that is wrong with the writing in My Pride in extreme and eloquent depth. So instead of rehashing that, I opened up WordPad and I hashed out a 14-page assessment of what I would change and what I would leave in the story and the setting. And I thought that I would share it with the community as a whole and see which parts people agree with me on, what people disagree on, what changes you guys would make. There's a whole community of very enthusiastic young hobbyist writers who come up with some amazing ideas, and I would love to hear them. These are just my thoughts on how to fix some of the character and world-building inconsistencies that really stand out. For those of you who do not want the official storyline spoiled for you, this is your chance to turn back before I start talking details. For the rest of you who have already seen the show, or don't care about spoilers, let's dive right in. So the first thing that we're going to do is establish some ground rules. These are rules about the setting and lore that we are absolutely never going to break. The first of them is the truth of what happens between Light, Karabi, and Kyoga stays unchanged. The historical truth of the matter is that Kyoga and Karabi were in love, and Light went on a crusade when Kyoga disappeared, ultimately killing Karabi. He then went on to paint his version of the events and build Pride Law out of them. We are not going to change what we were told of Pride Law. It's an inherently flawed, toxic, and oppressive system that is meant to be seen as inherently flawed, toxic, and oppressive. Males take over a pride by killing each other and all rival cubs. Lionesses belong to and follow the will of their mane. Lionesses are born nameless, and males are born with names, but they must be exiled and wander about to find a pride to take over to earn their mane. Huntresses are named according to their skills, and it's forbidden for lionesses to engage in same-sex relationships. This is the only ancient law that we were informed of, and it's the only one that we were told is punishable by death. I am going to tack on that any infraction is punishable by death or exile. This means that a mane's authority is absolute, and it underscores the fear that lionesses have of being exiled to wander alone. It also serves to tell us that unlike what we see later in the show, a lioness cannot choose to reject a new mane. When a mane is challenged and defeated in fair combat, the pride is the newcomer's by right. We are going to take out a few characters such as Ghost, Silent Stalk, Fireleap, Water Hunter, Proud, Tangle, the other no-manes, Feather and Quickmane's other children, and the pride that Fire attempts to take over. This is because the show ultimately suffers from having too many different characters to juggle. Many of the ones that I just named are extremely one-note or only exist to die. Removing them does absolutely no harm to the story at all. The state of the three goddesses is something that we're also not going to change. Azra manifested through Kyoga and subsequently disappeared and has been gone since. Suns is furious about the whole situation, and Kansu is doing her best to patch things up between her sisters. In my version, however, we're going to take out the fact that Suns is furious with Azra for interfering. We are going to stick in that the goddesses can nudge where needed. If their power is invoked, they can manifest in their chosen lion or lioness, and if their wrath is incurred, they can unleash great devastation, as we see when Suns burns the Emerald Valley. The reason for Sansa's anger toward Azra is going to be, in this version, that when Azra disappeared, she created an imbalance in the world. Because the spirits are not going to the stars, because Azra is not there to guide them, the spirits are left to wander Earth alone and quite lost, and sometimes they cause disturbances. And lastly, lions can swear, because if you can have gouts of blood spurting out of a character's wound, you can have a lion say fuck. It's constantly reaffirmed that the series is not for kids, so Hover is allowed to say fuck, because I say so. Almost everything leading up to Nothing's leg injury is going to stay more or less the same. We're going to keep the introductory exposition, we're going to keep Starmane and Spark being murdered, we're going to keep Nothing half-blinding Quickmane, and he's going to scar and cripple her for life. We are not going to keep the line Azra may take me, but you will never win, because I don't like that line. All of this is our introduction to the foundations of Pride Law, the explanation of the view of the world that Nothing grows up with, and the crux of the rift between Nothing and her pride. Questioning everything that she's been taught will lead into what eventually separates them. We see Fire and Nothing get more of a reaction to losing their father and brother, and we see them snuggle up to one another as they try to adjust to their new reality. They now have to cope with the fact that their family is smaller, and the fact that their lives hang on Sharptongue's word that the goddesses would be angry if they were to be threatened again. We follow this with some scenes of Nothing and Fire growing up in the shadow of this new paradigm. Most of the lionesses are not actively hostile to Nothing in this version, but neither do they stick up for her or otherwise intervene when their leader talks down to her. Bystander syndrome is in full effect here. In private, Powerstrike tries her best to support her daughter alongside Sharptongue, but in public she won't defy her main for the sake of retaining her own place in the Pride. Fire and Nothing ultimately only have each other and their grandmother, and they all know that one day soon Fire will have to leave. Nothing tries to take her Huntress assessment when she comes of age, but Quickmane sneers that she will most likely earn a name like Hopplestep and she loses her nerve. She asks Powerstrike, who is now the Hunt Chief, for more time to prepare, and she is granted it. There's a montage of time passing, and we rejoin our protagonists when Quickmane is about to chase Fire out of the Pride. This and Nothing's Huntress assessment go much the same as the show, except for one small difference. Quickmane heckles her, Nothing trips. Powerstrike looks concerned for her well-being but cannot step forward to make sure she's okay, as a Hunt Chief cannot intervene in an assessment. Quickmane declares the assessment a waste of time and says that it's over. She gets her name, but rather than it being entirely Powerstrike's decision, we see her look at Quickmane with a distinctly uncomfortable expression. She hesitates, he bares his teeth at her, and Powerstrike names her daughter Nothing. The other lionesses exchange glances, quietly stunned at the cruelty of such a name. Sharptongue looks frustrated and upset. Fire is exiled shortly thereafter. We get a shot of Powerstrike nuzzling him goodbye, looking heartbroken. Quickmane interrupts the farewells and sends Fire away before Nothing can say her own goodbyes. Here I'm going to insert a new scene that takes place slightly later in the day. A frail-looking Sharptongue confronts Powerstrike and demands to know why she would do such a thing. Powerstrike hesitates, takes a deep breath, and quietly says that huntresses belong to their mane. Sharptongue immediately understands that Quickmane forced the issue and moves to comfort her daughter. The pair of them resolve to do their best to support Nothing. Sharptongue then goes to comfort Nothing, as happens in the show. The change in the relationship between Powerstrike and Nothing is twofold. It follows logically from Powerstrike's love and protectiveness of her cubs, and reinforces that as main, Quickmane has the final say on everything that goes on in his pride. Him being the one to choose and insist on Nothing's name also asserts his control over her in a very cruel way, stripping the cub who bested him of her self-worth by reminding her of her disability every time someone speaks to her. Nothing asks for space and wanders off to be alone to process what's just happened. As in this show, she meets Hover at the watering hole while saving her from a crocodile. Hover asks what happened to Nothing's leg, but when Nothing shows a reluctance to talk about it, in this version Hover respects that. "Soft spot, eh? I'm sorry," she says, looking contrite. "That's fair enough. Every scar has a story. I'm Hover, by the way." Nothing introduces herself as in the show. Hover is confused at first, but then, instead of laughing, she gives Nothing a pitying look. "Jeez," she says. "That's mean even for pride lions." Nothing proceeds to get curious and asks Hover about being prideless. They have their exchange where they joke about pride perception of prideless lions. Hover boasts that she's self-named, self-taught, and knows the prideless stretch like the back of her paw. She slyly adds that she doesn't often meet cute lionesses who are willing to throw themselves in front of a crocodile for a stranger there, though, to which Nothing becomes a little flustered. Hover keeps flirting openly until Nothing's pride mates show up. Power Strike, misunderstanding the situation, assumes Nothing is in danger and starts running into attack instead of holding a conversation with Hover. Hover flees, tossing a "see you around, Scars" over her shoulder as she gives Power Strike the slip. Nothing is left looking hopeful and a little smitten. Then her expression shifts to something more worried and conflicted as she remembers that under Pride law, a romantic relationship with another lioness is forbidden and could get them both killed. Hover does not stay gone for long, and she convinces Nothing to meet with her in secret, as in the show. We see a short montage of them spending time together over the next few weeks. Hover tells Nothing plenty of stories of living on the stretch, not all of which Nothing believes as she comes to understand that Hover is prone to embellishing a little. Nothing gets comfortable teasing her about it, and Hover's flirting gets more and more forward. Scars turns into a very affectionate nickname as Hover refuses to call Nothing by her given name. Nothing opens up to her about losing her father and brothers and how she got injured. Hover thinks it's pretty fucking cool that Nothing half-blinded a fully grown lion when she was just a cub. Meanwhile, things in the Pride have not gotten easier for Nothing as she frequently gets questioned about the scent of that prideless lioness hanging around the territory. Nothing does her best to hide that she's been meeting Hover, but she still gets shouted at on a fairly constant basis. Without proof, Quickmane can't actually do anything, but he has strong suspicions about what's going on. Sharp Tongue and Power Strike can only do so much to mitigate this. Nothing is also still having her strange recurring dreams about the shifting place. Ghost does not feature in them, but Kansu's mortal form does, posing the question, if you could change everything, would you? And following it up with, what would you give up to do it? Instead of telling Hover that Sharp Tongue is dying and trying to convince her to join the Pride, after Hover finishes telling a story, Nothing wistfully remarks that, I wish I could do half the things that you do, Hover. You don't answer to anyone. Nobody's constantly waiting for their next chance to remind you that you're... She trails off, and Hover finishes quietly, Nothing. Yeah, Nothing sighs. There's a short pause. You could come with me, Scars, Hover says abruptly. You could leave this place and not have to deal with that shit anymore. You could pick your own name, be anyone you want to be. No rules, no rituals, nothing to tie you down. We could go anywhere you want. We? Nothing asks quietly. Hover doesn't even hesitate to confirm we. I really like you, Scars, and I want to go wherever you go. Being near you, making you laugh with my stupid jokes, and seeing that look on your face when you get so invested in my stories, it's wonderful. You're wonderful. And I want to stick around and maybe see where this goes. Nothing is elated at first, but starts to frown. Hover, I don't know how to survive on the Prideless stretch, she objects. I've never learned how to hunt. I can teach you, Hover immediately offers. We'll practice working as a team until we're unstoppable. And Pride law says that it's forbidden to... Nothing clears her throat and gives Hover a shy, nervous look. Have relationships with other lionesses. There's no Pride law out there. Nothing to stop us, Hover insists. Come on, Scars, what has Pride law ever done for you? Torn your family apart? Told you that you were worthless? Life can be better than this. Her tone softens. I think you know that. Nothing still hesitates, but Hover has a point and it's hard to argue with it. I don't know, she finally says. Can I have a few days to think about it? Hover is disappointed that Nothing doesn't immediately rush off with her, but she nods. Yeah, she says. That's fair. Their time together is running short. They part ways with a friendly nuzzle instead of an argument about Hover joining Nothing's Pride. From here, things proceed as in the show. A Pride meeting happens, establishing that a band of no-mains has been scented on the edge of the territory. There's still a prideless lioness hanging around, etc. Nothing and Sharp Tongue are left on cub watching duty. Sharp Tongue dies with a cryptic comment about breaking the cycle. This time around, Power Strike lets Nothing comfort her and share in her grief because the relationship is more stable. They share a sweet moment in which they reminisce about Sharptongue in the prime of her life, and each remarks that they're going to miss her. The Pride calls to Azra to take Sharptongue's spirit as they did in the show. Hover later comes by to investigate all the roaring. We get a brief shot of Quickmane stirring as Nothing sneaks away. His eyes open and he sniffs the air, then growls quietly to himself. Nothing tells Hover that Pride Lions are afraid of being prideless because they fear that no one will call Azra to their side when they die. They fear their spirits roaming forever, trapped outside of the afterlife because their goddess cannot find them. Hover is quietly contemplative for a moment. Then she says, "I would roar for you." Nothing is confused for a second, but then she remembers their earlier conversation. "You would?" she asks softly. "You never have to worry about being alone on the Prideless stretch," Hover says. "Like I said, I like you. I want to stay with you, wherever that takes us." Nothing is quietly stunned, and then she smiles, nuzzles Hover, and says, "I want that too." They are promptly intruded upon by Quickmane. He's seen and heard everything, and he knows from Hover's scent that she's the Prideless Lioness he's been trying to track down and drive out, and now he knows that she's been seeing Nothing. He flies into a rage and wakes the Pride with a roar, calling Nothing and Hover unnatural and demanding their deaths. He attacks and tries to kill Nothing, and Hover intervenes, screaming at Nothing to run. Nothing hesitates, looking at her mother desperately in hopes of getting some support, but Power Strike can do nothing but look on in horror. Out of options, Nothing flees, hobbling as quickly as she can. The grass behind her rustles, and Hover comes bounding alongside her, anxiously urging Nothing on and trying not to leave her behind. They keep running past the boundary of Quickmane's territory, with him bursting out of the grass behind them. He stops at the border, shouting after them that he hopes the Prideless stretch kills them slowly. Hover and Nothing have a tough time on the stretch over the next few weeks, but not to the degree that Nothing did while trying to take care of a young cub. Hover knows her way around and where to find food and water, and she knows who to avoid. Nothing's attempts to learn to hunt go slowly, however, and they go hungry more often than not. Nothing continues to have dreams/nightmares of the shifting place and asks Hover if she's ever heard of it. Hover hasn't, and she tries to get Nothing to focus more on hunting than on dreams. Days pass and the two of them get hungrier, tempers start to fray, and on top of that, Hover is nervous because she can smell a group of no-mains nearby. But one of the scents is familiar to Nothing. It's her brother, Fire. She wants to go and say hello. Hover insists that no-mains can be dangerous and it's better to keep their distance. Nothing insists that Fire would never hurt her, but Hover points out that it's been a while since Nothing has last seen him. A lot could have changed. Nothing has to, albeit a little begrudgingly, concede the point. That night they argue, with Nothing saying that it seems Hover doesn't take Nothing's viewpoint into consideration. Hover counters that Nothing doesn't know what the stretch is like, and they have to be smart if they want to survive. Nothing puts forward that she simply can't hunt like Hover can, and suggests that they find a middle ground somehow. Hover frustratedly says that she doesn't know what middle ground there could be. Nothing suggests that she spooks the prey since she seems to be very good at that, and Hover catches it. Hover starts to argue, but then she thinks about it and admits that that could work. Then she sighs and apologizes for being so uptight. She's been worried about keeping them both safe and fed, and Nothing is right. She hasn't really been listening to Nothing's suggestions, but she's going to start listening more closely, and they're going to get through this together, a day at a time. They curl up together, and as they start to fall asleep, Hover peeks at Nothing and whispers, "I love you." Nothing appears to already be asleep, so Hover closes her eyes and drifts off with a smile on her face. We get a look at Nothing, who is also smiling. Kansu visits in a dream that night. It goes more or less the same as in the show, but without Feather being there and with Kansu filling Ghost's role as Nothing's guide to the shifting place. Backstory, exposition, explaining what the shifting place is, etc., etc. Again, minus the line, "Azra may take me, but you will never win." Nothing wakes up and blurts it all out to Hover, who handles it with what can best be described as tolerant and slightly sleepy confusion. She doesn't fully understand why Nothing is so worked up about a strange dream, but she says that they can start heading towards a jungle that she knows the whereabouts of, and hope that either that's where they're going, or that they come across this shifting place somewhere along the way. She points out that now they're awake, they might as well try putting Nothing's ideas about hunting to the test. They come across a gazelle on the border of a pride's territory. Hover has Nothing hide in a relatively inconspicuous spot while she stalks around to the perfect place to set an ambush. Their plan almost goes off without a hitch, but just as Hover is about to catch their breakfast, a blur of tan fur and brown mane comes flying at their prey from a different direction. The lion kills their prey and turns to warn Hover off with a snarl. Hover thinks they've run afoul of the pride's mane and starts to back off, but Nothing realizes she's looking at her brother, Fire. He's stunned but excited to see her, wondering why she's so far from home. Nothing explains what's happened in the pride since she last saw him. Fire looks between her and Hover, then apologizes and introduces himself to his sister's girlfriend. He adds that it's good that Nothing has someone to look after her, prompting a slightly annoyed look from Hover. Scars here doesn't need looking after, she says, nudging Nothing with her shoulder. We're partners. She smiles at Nothing adoringly, and Nothing can't help but smile back. Of course, says Fire. I didn't mean to cause offense. But he doesn't seem quite sincere, and Hover frowns at him. Nothing cuts in and asks what Fire has been doing since he was exiled. He explains that he joined a band of no-mains pretty early on, but because he was the smallest of them, it was still a tough way to live. Montage time. He scraped by, eating the scraps that the other males left. He learned to fight, and he grew lean and strong wandering with them out on the stretch. Eventually, this led to him leaving the group and beginning the search for a pride of his own, because in his own words, a male lion without a pride has no future. He further elaborates that the mane of the territory they are skirting the borders of is old, but huge, and a veteran of combat. He explains he chose it because there aren't any cubs around, so he doesn't have to kill anyone. Then he adds that he's in for a tough fight, and he'd appreciate it if they'd be there to back him up. Hover gives him a skeptical once-over and looks at Nothing, questioning if they're really considering this. Is this kind of thing even allowed in prides? She asks. It would be unorthodox, Nothing admits uncomfortably, shifting her weight. I'm not sure. You would both have a place in my pride for helping me, Fire offers quickly, seeing her indecision. I'm sure we can come up with a story. You could both be my sisters from different mothers. Hover gives Nothing another look, this time openly disapproving of the idea. Sounds an awful lot like would be expected to follow pride law, she mutters. Well, yes, but you'll be treated well, I promise, Fire says earnestly. He's looking at Nothing too. More specifically, he's looking directly at her injured leg. Nothing tucks her paw closer to her chest, flattening her ears. I suppose that's true, but we'd have to pretend that we aren't partners, she says quietly, looking at Hover. We were trying to get away from this kind of shit, Hover points out, scowling at Fire. She turns to Nothing, her expression and tone softening. I love you, and I'm not going to hide that, she says. Not for anything or anyone. Nothing stares back at her, starting to smile. I love you too, she says, tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. She takes a deep breath and addresses her brother's request. I'm sorry, Fire. I won't keep upholding pride law. Not after everything I've learned about it. Disappointed and frustrated, Fire pulls back, his muzzle wrinkling. He lashes out, You're giving up a comfortable life, safe from starvation and no-mains and prideless lions. For what? For her? Yes, and because it's all wrong, Nothing snaps. Then she softens, her tone turning pleading. Fire, the legends, Light, and Kyoga, nothing actually happened the way we were told it did. Pride law is built on hate and fear, and that's all that will ever come out of it. Life can be better than this, and I'm going to prove it. Hover smiles proudly, recognizing her own words. Help us instead, Nothing says. Come with us, Fire. Let me explain everything to you. Fire hesitates, looking between his sister and the territory of the mane he was planning to kill. For a moment, it doesn't seem like he's prepared to just give up on his goals. Then he looks down at the forgotten dead gazelle and says, Why don't we all eat while you explain? Nothing tells Fire everything that Kansu told her, and by the end of it, he's wide-eyed and staring at her with a piece of meat hanging out of his mouth. He quickly chews, swallows, and comments that was a lot for her to expect him to believe. I know, Nothing says. I'm still having some trouble with it myself. But it's the truth, Fire. I wouldn't lie to you about something this important. Fire rolls a pebble beneath his paw, thinking, and then says, "Suppose I do believe you. How do you even plan to get to a place that moves every day?" "The way I figure it," Hover says, "our best bet is still heading towards that jungle I mentioned. Either it turns out that the stream was just caused by a bad bite of zebra, in which case we will have an easier time surviving there than on the stretch anyway, or there's something to this shifting place and it'll come to scars, like Kansu said." Fire nods slowly. He comes to the conclusion that he would rather accompany his sister on her journey than kill, or risk being killed by, a main who might not be all that different from his father. Hover snarks that they're all going to be prideless best buddies, and they set off. That night, as they settle down to sleep, Hover and Nothing curled up together and Fire sleeping a short distance away, Nothing gently corrects Hover. "We're not prideless, you know," she says. Hover tilts her head, confused. "How's that?" "You are my pride now," Nothing says softly. "Wherever you go, I go." As they set out the next day, Fire takes Nothing aside. He hesitantly says that should they be successful, they'll be tearing down the entirety of Pride Law. He doesn't know what consequences that will have for the world, but he would like to know. If Nothing didn't have to hold up her vow to keep her terrible name, and she were to choose a name for herself, what name would it be? Nothing thinks about that for a minute, and she answers, "I think I'd pick Karabi." When that gets her surprised looks from Fire and Hover, she elaborates, "All she was guilty of was trying to protect the one she loved, but history remembers her as this horrible villain. I want to honor her memory instead." Hover nuzzles her and says, "Karabi. I think it's perfect." Fire nods, and the camera pulls back on the three of them trekking across the wide wasteland that is the Prideless Stretch. On a jutting spur of rock far behind them, Kansu is seen smiling down at them. There's a montage of days and nights passing as the trio do their best to keep their spirits up with every day that goes by and they don't find the shifting place. They do better at keeping them all fed with three of them to help with the hunting. Fire and the newly named Karabi get a few touching scenes where they reminisce about being cubs, about spending time with their parents and grandmother, and reconnect. Karabi remarks that she hopes that Power Strike is doing okay. Hover and Karabi generally go on being cute dorks in love. One day they wake up and there's an unnaturally thick mist surrounding them. They look around, trying to get their bearings. Just when they start to panic, the mists shift and part to reveal a startlingly green jungle where there had been nothing but dry savanna before. Birdsong pierces the silence, serene and unnerving at the same time. The sounds of croaking frogs and chirping insects seem completely out of place. "Is this that jungle you were taking us to, Hover?" Fire asks, his voice hushed. "No," Hover answers. "This is something else." Karabi blinks and breathes. "This is it. The shifting place. Kansu was right. It came to me." Her companions shift uncertainly. "Should we go in?" Fire ventures. Suddenly Karabi is nervous. What is she supposed to say when they find Azra? How will she convince a goddess to leave her hiding place? She takes a deep breath, lifts her chin, and pads forward. "We can do this," she says, mostly to convince herself. "We can do this." As the trio slips into the dense vegetation, the mists start to close behind them. The camera pulls back and the shifting place vanishes again, with the three protagonists inside. Somewhere in the jungle's heart, we the audience get our first glimpse of Azra. She stirs from her nap in the fork of a tree, turning her head toward the viewer, pricking her ears as if she can hear something we cannot. Her eyes glow brightly, and she does not look pleased. And that's the end of Season 1. Now, I'm not a published writer in any capacity, and obviously there are things about my version that aren't perfect, that some people would take and run with and change themselves. There are people who already think that the original work is a masterpiece and would probably hate the fact that I've tampered with it. But even if you think all of my ideas are garbage, I hope that you can at least see that the characters are more consistent and the plot flows a little more organically, especially the relationship between Hover and Nothing. Something that is meant to draw in viewers and is one of the primary focuses of the show should be given its due attention, after all. If you've stuck around this long and listened to me ramble for half an hour now, you are beautiful souls, and I love all of you. Stay safe, take care, stay hydrated. Remember to take your meds if you've forgotten today. Eat food. Food is important. Take your vitamins. And let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know if this is an absolutely terrible rewrite and it should be lit on fire and thrown in the trash. Wouldn't blame you. But yeah, give me some feedback. Let me know. Share your own ideas for a rewrite if you're so inclined. And I will catch you all in the next video.